Something changes when your income crosses 100K. Maybe it's the first self-assessment, a bonus that pushes you over, RSU vesting, a baby arrives, and suddenly childcare thresholds matter. Then you discover the 60% tax trap. You were shocked at first, but okay, salary sacrificing to pension can fix it. But the pension is locked until 57. Wait, wasn't it 55? And RSUs, that's not taxed as capital gains? And you think, if I only just found out about this, what else don't I know? For a lot of people at this income level, often the first in their family to get here, there's no one who's been here before to explain what comes next. So every new rule feels like something you might have missed. The question doesn't go away when you do more research, it gets louder. This video is about why that happens and the specific decisions that start showing up when you are earning more than 100K. So let's start with why the question gets louder when you do more research. Learning the rule usually doesn't resolve the feeling. If I miss this, what else am I missing? The tension here isn't just about tax rules, it's structural. First, the rules are generic, but your life isn't. Most explanations describe the rule in isolation, but the moment you apply it, the situation becomes specific. Bonus timing, your tax code, your partner's income, dividends. So the real question becomes, does this apply to my specific situation? And generic explanations can't fully answer that. Second, people instinctively chase precision. You try to calculate the exact outcome, but the inputs keep moving before the calculation settles. It's funny they call it self-assessment, because for many people, the hardest part is assessing it themselves. Salary sacrifice and employer pension sounds interchangeable. They aren't. Your employer scheme and your SIP are tracked separately. Rental income doesn't follow the April tax year, neither does your mortgage statement or your spouse's payroll. Bonus vests mid-year and the income lands unpredictably. Most people don't see the full picture until the P60 arrives, after the tax year has closed. So you end up deciding how much to put into SIP before April 5th, using numbers you won't know for sure until June. Precision isn't a failure of effort. In practice, the calculation often only settles after the deadline has passed. Third, there's a fairness reaction that technical explanations don't really address. The 100K taper isn't just experienced at a higher marginal rate. It feels like clawback, like something being taken back once you cross the invisible line. And when something feels unfair, the question becomes emotional as well as mathematical. They start asking, what else is hiding in the system I haven't seen yet? That's why the more people research, the more uncertain they often feel. Finally, uncertainty makes the trade-off feel risky. Even if you understand the mechanism, the decision often looks like this. Put more into pension and lose access until later, or keep flexibility and pay more tax today. If the rules feels unstable or incomplete, that trade-off becomes hard to trust. So people hesitate because the system feels opaque. And when the system feels opaque, every decision carries a new risk. The risk that there is just another rule you haven't seen yet. That's why more tax explanations usually don't remove the feeling, they add information but not certainty. So the real tension isn't just how do I optimize this year, it's how do I build a structure where these rules don't keep throwing my decisions off. So what does that structure actually look like? It's simpler than most people think. In the UK system, that structure usually comes down to 3 containers, a pension, an ISA, and once those are full, a general investment account. Each has a different job. The pension handles long-term security. It answers, will I be okay eventually? With tax relief, employer match, and decades of compounding, this part of the system is designed to grow quietly in the background. The ISA handles flexibility before the pension unlocks. It answers a different question, do I have options before them? This is a bridge capital, accessible, tax efficient, not dependent on government-set access age. And once these wrappers are full, a general investment account handles the overflow. It's simply where additional investments go to once the tax-efficient space is used up. Here's the point that changes how the system feels. The structure doesn't rely on any single rule stay fixed. If the pension access age moves again, the ISA still works. If the threshold shifts, you can adjust your contribution. The system isn't built around predicting every single rule. It's built around simple containers that can tolerate change. That's what robustness actually means. Not a perfect plan, a structure that's clear enough to adapt when rules and life move around it. This means year-end stops being a time where you fix everything. It becomes something much simpler. You're not solving the entire tax code. You're just making sure the right containers are being filled in the right order. That's the shift, from chasing certainty to trusting the structure underneath it. And once the structure is in place, year-end starts to look different. In a well-designed system, most of the important decisions are not made in March. They are made at the start of the year. You decide the structure first, how much flows into pension, how much flows to ISA, what the monthly system looks like when your income arrives. Then the money moves automatically. By the time you reach the end of the tax year, most of the work is already done. Year-end isn't where the strategy happens. It's where you deal with irregulars, a bonus that landed late, RSU vesting, a contribution you want to top up before 5th of April. You're not designing the system under pressure. You're adjusting something that's already been running all year round. That design once review quarterly rhythm is what my book, The Compound, is built around. Once the system is designed and running, year-end mostly comes down to managing the irregulars. For high earners between roughly 100K and 220K, these situations show up again and again. Thresholds, irregular income, and what to do when the wrappers are full. Let's take them one at a time. The first is the 100K threshold. Two rules sit around this number: the personal allowance taper and childcare eligibility. Between 100K and £125,140, you gradually lose your personal allowance. That creates an effective marginal tax rate around 60%. At the same time, most families also lose access to tax-free childcare and the working parent childcare entitlements if either parent's adjusted net income goes above 100K. So crossing that line can trigger several effects at once, often without meaningfully improve the household's take-home income. Salary sacrifice into a pension reduces adjusted net income. That can restore part of the personal allowance and keep childcare eligibility intact. One decision, two outcomes. The same move serves multiple jobs at once. The second situation is irregular income. RSUs, a large bonus, something that lands mid-year and suddenly pushes the income higher than expected. RSUs often surprise people because the tax happens in two stages. When RSUs vest, the value is treated as income. Income tax and national insurance apply immediately. So by the time the shares land in your account, the tax on that income has already been paid. If you continue holding the shares and sell them later, any additional gain is taxed again, this time as capital gains, which is why many high earners are surprised to realize they've been effectively taxed twice. But the biggest issue isn't the tax, it's concentration. By the time RSU vests, your salary, bonus, and equity exposure are all tied to the same company. Holding the shares longer means increasing the exposure to the place that already pays you, which is why many people choose to sell RSUs close to vesting and reinvest elsewhere, not as tax strategy, but as diversification. Whatever the source, bonus, RSU, other shares, the structure treats it the same way. Irregular income flows into the same containers as everything else. The third situation appears when income rises further. Sometimes the question isn't which wrapper to prioritize, it's what to do once they appear to be full. The ISA allowance is £20,000. The pension allowance is currently £60,000. But before assuming the pension is full, there's one rule worth checking. Unused pension allowance from the previous 3 tax years can be carried forward. So the first step is to check whether that space still exists. If the pension allowance is genuinely used and the ISA allowance is filled, the next container is a general investment account. A GIA doesn't have the tax protections of a pension or ISA, but it still compounds. Over time, gains can be moved gradually into ISAs as new allowances opens each year, and you can utilize your capital gain allowances while doing so. There are other options people sometimes explore, certain relief schemes, charitable giving, that can play a role in specific situations, but those sit at the edges. The containers are still doing the main work. Let me come back to where we started, the role discovery spiral. Taper, childcare, bonus timing, RSUs, each one is real. Each one is worth understanding, but none of them, individually or together, create security. Security comes from a structure that holds across outcomes, one that doesn't rely on every rule stay fixed. Once that exists, new rules become adjustments. That's the shift, not from confusion to perfect knowledge, from fragility to robustness. If you want to review whether your structure actually holds across the kind of changes we talked about today, that's what the allocation diagnostic is designed for. We look at the architecture of your system, where it's strong and where it's fragile, and whether the containers and decisions are working together. Link is below in the description. If you are earlier in the process and want to start with the foundation, the Freedom Number Guide is also linked below. And if you want to go deeper into the mechanics, 2 videos sit directly underneath this one. Pension versus ISA, the allocation decision before April 5th, and how to invest a lump sum, what to do when a bonus, RSU vesting, or unexpected cash lands and needs somewhere to go. Both are linked above. I'll see you in the next one.